Good morning, everybody. We are here, GWTV Live. It's a beautiful Saturday morning, beautiful, and time for GW Women's College Basketball. We head now to the Charles E. Smith Center with Parker Jensen. Today, the Colonials take on the St. Louis Billikens. Parker, what does this matchup look like to you?
Well, if we look at St. Louis's recent play, especially in recent games, they haven't been doing too well. So if we're looking at something today, we need to look at their away record. They're 2-7. They're not doing well, and they lost to two mediocre teams very recently compared to GW, who just came off of a win off of Rhode Island. They're doing pretty well, and they're looking good both at home and away. They're 3-2 the past 5 games. So GW is looking well in that department. If we also look at St. Louis's recent loss to George Mason, GW beat that team already, so that's something to look forward to in this game as well. Something that's not favoring GW is the experience of St. Louis. There's a lot of seniors on that team, so their experience, they know what to do in those tight situations. If you look at GW's bench, they're a relatively young team, so that's something GW needs to look out for. And another thing for St. Louis, they only have one major scorer. There's only one playmaker on that team. There's only one large scorer, as opposed to GW has a lot of those playmakers, a lot of those scorers, a lot of people that can dish out assists, so that's something to look at this game.
For GW, it's an A10 conference game. Both teams right now, St. Louis and GW, in the middle of the pack. Both teams with about a 10-10 average, 9-10 for GW, and both teams right now with 4-3 in conference play. So as you mentioned, pros and cons from both sides. In terms of individual players from GW, who should we look to really step up today?
Well, there's two people that have been playing really well recently. If we look at Brianna Cummings, she's been the dominant player this entire season. She's been posting up large numbers. If we look at the previous game too, she's helping players out. If we look at Kelly Prangy, who's also another player to look out for, she's just helping her out too. Brianna can dish assists. She can get those points going as well. And the other person to look out for is Kelly Prangy. She set an A10 career high, 36 points in her last game. She got 13 rebounds as well. Just a phenomenal game, and she's been playing really well ever since she came back on this team. So these two are dominant players and something they need to look out for.
Now, on the defensive side of the ball, who from the Billikens does GW really need to concentrate on stopping?
Well, there's only one real person, that's Jackie Kemp. She's a dominant scorer. She scored 24 points in her last game. She's phenomenal. She can also dish out assists as well, but there's no one that can really score on the other team. She's a dominant playmaker on that team. Now, we see some players get about 10 points a game, but if we're looking at a dominant MVP-like player, Jack is the only person on that St. Louis team that can fill that role.
Now, GW, as we've talked about, kind of having a relatively mediocre season. What do they need to improve on today in order to come away with a win against St. Louis?
Well, we've been talking about this a little bit in the past. They really need to improve the three-point percentage. They have not been doing well. If we look at Rhode Island, they scored 14. They had a 14% three-point percentage. They did not do well in that game, and 9% at Davidson. And we need to look at two players in particular, Milan Bautista and Kelsey Mahoney. They have not been doing well from the three. They need to do better in this game. They need to get those threes going. But if we look at their warm-ups, they've been sinking those threes. They've been doing really well. So I'm not really too concerned as much for this game. But overall, they really need to look at that going forward into the season.
So it sounds like some pretty good outlook for GW today. Now, finally, Parker, what's your prediction? What will happen this morning?
Well, these are two really close teams. They are both good on the offense and defensive ends. They're really similar teams. But if you look at St. Louis's away record, they're 2-7. They haven't been doing well recently, so I have to give the advantage to GW. It's going to be close. I'm going to say about 66-61, but I do think the Lady Colonials will pull this one today.
Well, that's good to hear. Thank you very much, Parker Jensen, live from the Charles E. Smith Center. We'll be back at you for the halftime show. GW Women's Basketball taking on the St. Louis Billikens. Stay tuned with GWTV Online, Facebook, Twitter, GWTV_sports. We'll be back to you for the halftime show.